Time now for the weigh-in here on the MMA Hour, where I give sort of an editorial opinion about some things that are happening in the world of mixed martial arts. I noticed something on Friday night. Did you guys watch Bellator 204? James Gallagher was back from a bit of a long layoff due to a series of, who knows if there were matchmaking problems, but certainly there were injury concerns that were involved there. He was back. He faced a guy, a very talented fighter by the name of Ricky Bandejas. Now, we all knew that James Gallagher had, there's no denying this, a big mouth, right? The guy talked a very big game to the point where I think some folks thought it was irritating, and then others, and I don't know that it's an unfair criticism, thought it was to a degree derivative of his teammate at SBG Dublin, Conor McGregor. In any case, so what happens, right? 204. He walks out to the cage and gets in Bandejas' face. Bandejas, I think, had walked to the cage first. So he comes in, circles, then Gallagher comes in, circles, and I think through the intro, got right up in his face, hands raised. Now, he didn't commit any kind of infraction, as I understand it. There was nothing, he didn't touch him. But, you know, certainly this is a moment of, for lack of a better description, provocation. In any case, the fight goes on, and Bandejas, who is a very talented guy, does what I think Jack Slack calls the Dutch hand trap, where he pulls down one hand with your lead hand, right? So if you're standing this way, they take their lead hand, they pull it down, they create a firing lane, and he fired the right and hit him. Clean. Gallagher didn't see it coming. Follows it up with another right hand, I think that landed, and then ultimately hit him with a side kick to the face that rocked him, dropped him. Bandejas gets on top, machine gun assault with ground and pound, vicious KO, closed the show in about half a round. Yeah. So what was the fallout afterwards? Quite predictable, actually. And I'm not even saying I'm against it. This is not me up here saying, oh, James Gallagher got mistreated. That's not what I'm saying. But what was the reaction? The reaction was basically glee and delight at this guy's KO. I think, as I mentioned before, some folks found his talk way too ahead of what he had accomplished. Some folks found it derivative, and some folks found it irritating. And I understand that, and I'm not here to change your opinion about that per se. Look, man, Gallagher's a grown kid, right? He knew what he was doing. He is at the age of making informed choices about his life. He knew he was talking a big game. He knew he was being a provocateur. He knew he was saying all the kinds of things that when you lose, it comes back to haunt you. He elected to promote himself that way, and when you lose in that kind of way, you have to face the consequences. And he did. Got on Instagram the next day and didn't back down, said, I'm still the S. And okay, right? Like, you have to expect that if you position yourself in such a way that when you lose, people will really bring the knives out. Okay, but the reality is twofold. Number one, that was one of the more interesting results that happened on that card. I believe that result ended up on SportsCenter, although a bit for the, the reversal of fortune, right? You're getting up in his face, they caught that on camera, then you get knocked out, they caught that on camera. It was the contrast, I think, that enabled them to put that on there. But what is the point here? The point here is as follows. I have interacted with James Gallagher a number of times in person. And I got to tell you, if you think you know him from what you see on camera when he's out there getting in Bandejas' face, you don't. Now, I can't proclaim to be his best friend. I'm not a family member. I don't really know him in that sense either. What I'm trying to point out to you is the reality of someone's true identity is always much more complicated. It's fine if you want to say, look, this guy went out and promoted himself in such a way, as I mentioned before, that when you lose, they're going to bring the knives out. It's going to be a lot of et tu, brute moments. Okay, I have no problem with that. What I do have a problem with is folks being like, these sweeping character generalizations. They're not really fair. It's really not who he is. He's actually a really sweet guy. He's kind, friendly. He's been super generous with his time. And yeah, look, when the microphones are on and the cameras are on, he puts on, I don't know if it's an air or if it's his personality dialed up to 10. I don't know what that is. But yeah, he comes across as a way to some that seems to pass the border of confident and into a cocky and into unnecessarily so, even combative, potentially. But I bring this up for a reason. Again, it's not to defend James Gallagher. He'll be fine. He'll be back in the cage. He's a grown man. He can handle it. It is to take back the notion of identity from what we consume as media. And this is why getting media right is very hard, but very important. Because for all of the Gallaghers out there, where somebody is brash, in your face, quite literally, and everything else, it cuts both ways. There's a lot of guys out there in this sport that present themselves as good guys. They're not. They're not. They're bad dudes. And I don't mean that in a positive way, right? Whatever you think you see on camera, I'm not telling you it's a lie altogether, because that's not quite true. You are who you project to the world. But if you're projecting something selectively to the world, then maybe they're not getting the full and complete picture. The reality is always complicated. For all of the people you think are bad people because they act in brash ways and then they get their comeuppance in the cage, there's another side to that coin in MMA. There's a lot of pretenders out there. That includes both in media, that includes as fighters, that includes a lot of people. A lot of people who you think are good are bad. A lot of people who you think are bad are good. Or, for the most part, something in between. It's always really complicated. A lot of people have compartmentalized identities. A lot of people have compartmentalized morality. A lot of people have compartmentalized projections to the world, and especially the younger ones among us, like young men at 20, 21, they're still trying to figure out who they are. So all I'm trying to say here is, not trying to change everyone's opinion. You walk that line, or rather you walk that plank, and you get to the end of it, you got to go overboard. That's just the way it works, right? But always be careful. Always be careful in this sport of making too sweeping a generalization about who somebody is from how they are consumed through media. Because I got news for you. That ain't the full picture. That's either for good, sometimes that can even be for bad. Always remember that.